picture in your head a pet snake, what do you see? Just close your eyes for a moment and think of a pet snake. Is your pet snake green or brown? Does it have a bright pink tongue? Maybe solid black pupils? Well, if that's what you're picturing, you're not alone. That just so happens to be the ball python, which is one of the most common types of pet snakes to own because of its nice and, well, mild temperament. But what if I told you there was an even more mild and easier to handle pet snake, especially if you're new to the practice? Well, you're in luck. I'm Evelyn Yates. I'm just a reptile owner. I've always had a fascination with funky creatures, everything from bugs to snakes. And just this year, I adopted my first pet snake. And in case you're considering getting one for yourself, I've done all the research, and so I can tell you a few things that I've uncovered before I went and made my first purchase. So one thing you need to be aware of with ball pythons is they are very sweet, but they, can be a little bit picky and pricey as far as new snakes go. Ball pythons are notorious for not eating under pressure and have even gone months starving themselves just because conditions in their terrarium, if you don't know what you're doing and you get something a little off, they might go on a month long or a week long, but still a hunger strike. And this can be a little bit freaky if you're new to owning snakes, you're not adjusted to these types of situations. And while boas aren't super active as far as snakes go, which is nice, a good rule of thumb too when picking out their terrarium is that there's enough room for your snake to fully stretch out if it needs to. Boas can reach upwards of 5 feet, not to mention they're very heavy bodied too. So you're looking at about a 50+ gallon terrarium that can be upwards of $400, and you're going to want to make sure it's sturdy because again, they're kind of heavy bodied, which isn't the best if you're on a budget. So with that in mind, what's a better snake to own? Well, and here we have corn snakes. So corn snakes are very hardy little colubrids that are actually native to the southeast region of the United States. They can be found in places like North Carolina and Atlanta. You'll find these guys do just fine with your household humidity and temperatures because they're very, they're natural here. They're very resilient and they can handle a few days being a little bit too warm, a little bit too cold, which is very nice if you're new to owning snakes and you're trying to figure out temperature settings. And they will still, through all that, happily accept meals. This little guy is hungry all the time. They're opportunistic eaters. So one thing too, I'm always kind of curious is these guys are fairly popular in the reptile community, but I don't see them advertised as often to the people that I think would benefit from owning them the most, which is first-time reptile owners. So another cool thing you'll notice, corn snakes are definitely a lot smaller than ball pythons. Bibo here is only 10 months old, so he's a juvenile, but once he's an adult, he could be anywhere from 3 to 4.5, sometimes even actually 5 feet as well. So most corn snakes actually, though, they're just fine in a 30 to 40 gallon tank. Plus, they only ever eat mice. They can live their whole lives just eating mice, nothing bigger, whereas boas, since they do get bigger, you're going to want to move them up to rats pretty quickly, which will cost you more on average. So now that you kind of have a feel for some of the contrast of responsibilities in between corn snakes and ball pythons, where you going, bud? Here's something also to know about corn snakes. They're also not only easy to care for, they're very fun to care for. Corn snakes, they're very active. They're not as slow and restful as ball pythons because ball pythons are nocturnal. So they're only active when they feel secluded and it's night. Corn snakes, on the other hand, are colubrids. So they're most active at dusk and dawn, morning, afternoon, and you can watch them just go ahead and crawl around their terrarium, just having a good old time. I see Bibo moving around constantly. And it's always so fun to watch them. They're so silly little guy. One thing also, in my opinion, I love the morphs that come with corn snakes. They come in a variety of different colors. Bibo here is an albino snow. So one thing I will say, not to say that boas don't also have a great selection of morphs. There's actually been a lot more breeding been put into the morphs of boa constrictors. However, corns, on average, their various morphs will be found for a lot cheaper. Some of my personal favorites are the candy canes, blood reds, lavender, anthristic, butter, palmetto, and personal favorite, biased, snows. But in conclusion, they're both starter snakes in terms of care requirements. A new owner might be kind of tricked up with the high maintenance, actually, well, respectively, that comes with a boa constrictor, whereas corn snakes are pretty chill and fun to handle. Ball pythons have definitely let their popularity get to their heads, and for somebody who has never owned a snake before, those guys can kind of be a bit much. So when it comes to snakes, definitely consider these little guys. Regardless if you yourself plan on purchasing a snake or you're not interested at all, just say somebody you know is interested who has never owned a snake before in getting their first pet. Well, remember these little guys, because they might even be a better fit for them.